Since the 2021 season, the Dallas Cowboys have had an amazing regular season where they managed to win 12 games every year, make the playoffs, and even win their division. During those 3 years, the Cowboys had an elite offense and defense that people saw as a recipe for them to win their conference and make it to the Super Bowl. Players like linebacker Micah Parsons, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, cornerback Deron Bland, guard Zach Martin, and cornerback Trevon Diggs all made it to an All-Pro first team and Pro Bowl in one or more seasons since 2021. Becoming an All-Pro player or Pro Bowler are two of the highest accolades that an NFL player can get. So for many of the players on the Cowboys to be known for achieving these awards show you how good the Cowboys were during those seasons. Even though the Cowboys have managed to keep their position as one of the top teams in the NFC and secure a spot in the playoffs, they haven't been able to finish the job of winning their conference. The farthest they made it in the playoffs since 2021 was the second round, better known as the divisional round, where they lost to the San Francisco 49ers. They also had bad losses in the wildcard round of the playoffs to teams they seemed on paper better than in 2021 and 2023. They matched up with the 49ers again in 2021, but this time they were the higher seed and still lost in a close game that ultimately went down to a wire. I wish I could say the same for when they played the Green Bay Packers last season in the playoffs, because they got blown out by the 7th-seed Packers with both their offense and defense struggling. In that game, they looked like a shell of their former selves, with them wasting another good regular season by not showing up in the playoffs. This has caused people to not take the Cowboys seriously and give people another reason to not trust them in the playoffs. This offseason, the Cowboys lost many of their players in free agency, and many of these players that left were crucial to their team and made significant contributions. These players include offensive tackle Tyron Smith, running back Tony Pollard, center Tyler Biadasz. The Cowboys then pivot and improve their roster with players that can diminish the loss of many of their former players. The biggest signings they had this offseason was the addition of Eric Kendricks and re-signing cornerback Jordan Lewis. Besides that, they had a disappointing offseason where they didn't do anything to upgrade their roster to help compete in the NFC. They also lost their defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, who took the head coaching job with the Washington Commanders. Quinn was able to turn the Cowboys defense into one of the best units in the league that stopped many offenses from scoring and even moving the ball downfield. He helped many of Dallas' defensive players unlock their full potential through his schemes and play calls, which is one of the reasons why the Cowboys were one of the best teams in the NFC during his time there. They replaced Dan Quinn with Mike Zimmerman, who is known for being one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. However, it's still going to be a challenge for the Cowboys' defensive players to learn the new style of their defense and figure out how they can succeed with Zimmerman's system. The Cowboys certainly took a step back this season and have more to answer than just the loss of their defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn. This includes if they will be able to get their run game back on track and find a balance between their run/pass game. Last season, they had Tony Pollard as their running back, who showed a lot of potential in 2022, but ultimately didn't live up to expectations and wasn't the answer for their run game. He was able to reach 1,000 yards last season, but his rushing yards per attempt, rushing touchdowns, and yards per game were lower than when he was splitting carries with Ezekiel Elliott in 2022. Even though Pollard didn't have much of a good season with the Cowboys, losing him in free agency to the Tennessee Titans will still negatively affect their offense. Another thing that's going to be new for their team is their offensive line. They lost 2 of their starters, and now their O-line needs to figure out the best replacements for Tyron Smith and Tyler Biadasz to keep their quarterback Dak Prescott protected and away from any pressure by opposing defenses. Their offensive line will also have to develop chemistry and create synergy with one another, since it's going to be somewhat of a new group. These problems caused the Cowboys to not be considered one of the top teams in the NFC like they used to be. The Cowboys probably missed their window to make it to the Super Bowl because their roster doesn't look that impressive for me to believe that they can finally get to their goal of making it out of their conference. They will be able to make the playoffs since they still have the majority of their star players on their roster, but they don't match up well against top teams in their conference like the San Francisco 49ers and Detroit Lions. The Dallas Cowboys have been consistently good these past few seasons, and unfortunately their team has taken a significant decline from what they used to be.